There you go. Okay. Anybody from case study 2 know that? All right, well, just don't do that assignment till after the presentation is the main thing. So this week you only have 1 chapter to read. Next week you don't have any reading. But the thing I mainly want to point out is that everything in the OMA is due by, I think it's next week. Your final one is going to be uploaded to TaskStream by March 1st. So wherever you are, I still have some people that owe me some revisions on 1. Some of you had some revisions on 1, but it was so minor you just needed to fix it and move on. Some had some revisions that were suggested but not required. So just be sure you get that in.
I'll give you a little snippet about case study 2.
Okay, good.
So it looks at student-based budgeting, and it refers back to chapter 2 of our other text, which goes into a lot of the different types of budgeting that schools can choose to do or have the option to do. And in case study 2, this principal is proposing that their school adopt the student-based budgeting, which is focused around your enrollment numbers and needs of the student population. So like at-risk learners, that sort of thing. And basically it's just telling the superintendent that that is the route that he is proposing that the school goes.
Okay, very good. But aren't there 2 different, if you open up case study 2, aren't there 2, didn't Dr. Lamb put 2 different examples in there?
It's about the Leandro case.
Right, but isn't there the top of that, doesn't it say something about a letter to the superintendent, and then the second part says something about funding?
Yes, there's a little bit of a case study too. There's like 1 paragraph there.
Well, actually, while you're here, why don't we just look at it?
Perfect.
Yeah, so we'll go down to case study 2. So this is what I was talking about. It says case study 1, but it's case study 2, correct?
Yes.
Yes, letter to the community. So that was the part that I thought was really confusing. All right. Any more questions about how you submit, what you submit, where you submit? All right. Just let me say that.
Not about the case study, but where you submit, because I'm obviously not submitting. I'm submitting for you, but not Dr. Whitaker.
Right.
So I feel like there's somewhere in that I missed.
I agree.
Okay.
I send it to her. I click on her name on the page and send it. This is Rhonda. Send it to the OMA assignment on in her clinical page.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if I guess she's not getting it because
Did she get it? Did she send you an email?
Yes.
So she's probably not getting it. All right, let's see if I can show you. Quickly where it is. All right, this is the coach shell. So if you look over here, I think it's this one. Yeah. There's actually, oh, here it is. Internship shell directions. Over here on the left, it says the task for review on the main menu. These are discussion boards for you to upload rough drafts for the coach review. And then the ones in the evaluation drop box are where you put it when they're ready, you've done all the revisions and everything's finished. So right here is the one for review, and you click on the one, whichever one you're doing, and you upload it here. Back and forth with her on comments about it. And then when it's complete and she tells you it's ready for task stream, you upload it here.
Okay, I was just putting it in on my task for review.
Gotcha. And that's where she should be able to see it if you've done it there, because that's where she reviews it. And then you don't put it in the evaluation Dropbox until she's ready. So it should be going right here. And if you put it there and you got a message from her saying that she doesn't have it, I would reply to that message and attach your whatever it is, OMA 1, 2, or 3 to that email and send it back to her. Because you have to be, you don't want to say anything negative, but this thing hasn't worked very well this semester. And it's just gone a little haywire from time to time. And so we're being very patient with you, I hope, and we expect you to do the same for us, because somebody's, I can't even remember who it was, for the past 3 days, I've sent out emails saying, I graded everything that's in there. I graded everything that's in there. And somebody responded to me and said, well, I have something in there, but I haven't heard from you. And all of a sudden, later that night, it popped up that it had been submitted since the 9th of February. But it hadn't come into my list until last night. So here's my thing. We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to let it frustrate us any more than it has to. We're just going to get it done. So if you put something in there, though, and somebody hasn't responded to you by the second day, you need to send us an email, text, or a phone call and tell us to get on it, because chances are it's wandering around there in cyberspace somewhere. Okay? Any other question about the artifacts? Speaking of cyberspace, that's kind of where we're going next. Now, you are so lucky that I was there on the ground floor when technology was invented. So back with Cleveland County Schools, I was one of their first technology curriculum specialists. That's how they titled it. And the hope was that if you were good in curriculum, they could teach you the technology, and then you would be able to get teachers to use it together. And it worked pretty well. But the other thing that we were responsible for doing was writing the very first rules and policies and discipline plans for technology. And let me tell you, it was no easy task, but it's nothing compared to what you're dealing with today. It has gotten far more complicated than we ever imagined. But we were so careful to try to think through everything. And this is in the beginning. And we still didn't, we still missed the boat. So I'll tell you about one. I'm sharing this with you for a lot of different reasons. I think it tells you what happens to a gifted student when they aren't properly challenged. I think it also reiterates the fact that gifted students believe that if rules are there, they should be followed. And if you don't have a rule, then you don't have to follow it, whatever it is. But they're real sticklers for, if you do have a rule, you need to follow it across the board, everybody. So when it says teachers will actively monitor what students are doing on the internet, they believe that a teacher should be actively monitoring on the internet. Okay, that's my segue into this story. So here's what happened. A student was coming in at 7 o'clock in the morning to do the, it slipped my mind right now, but the grant, the Husky grant. So they were able to come in, take a community college class, and get college credit for it. So they were taking Cisco router certification, so pretty high up in the technology. Do what? Did you say something, Joe? So it's pretty high up there.
Sorry, I was
So,
yelling at my children.
do what?
I was yelling at my children. They were being bad.
I'll threaten them too. So, that was the preface for it. He was in there studying. Okay, so he's monkeying around because the
Guys.
teacher told him
Guys,
frequently to help other people because he was like the top in the class. So instead of getting up from her desk and walking around to help other students, she would just say, hey, you know, so-and-so, how about telling so-and-so how to do that? Most of you, I can tell by your eyes and your body language, you understand why that would be a problem, especially if it happened over and over again. So this student had time to kill and wasn't being monitored very well. And so he found through his messing around on the computer all of the passwords for all the teachers in his school. Yes, he did. And this was back in the beginning when we used to use our social security number for passwords. How smart was that? So we also had that information. This meant he had access to discipline records and could change discipline records. He could change anything on the bus discipline he wanted to. Grades, he had access to that information because we weren't as sophisticated then as we are now. So he created a website, and on this website, he had links. This link goes to the teacher's password. This link goes to bus discipline if you want to change bus reports. This goes to grades. This is how you change your grade. So we had all of these different links for things that students could do with this information. And it just so happened that this teacher's son sat beside this person. And so he leaned over and said to him, look what I've created while your mother is sitting there at the desk, not monitoring me. And he went on to explain, I have a link where they can have access to every teacher's password and so forth. So the next period was lunch. So the IG student gets up, heads on, well, no, it was 7, so it wasn't lunch. Whatever it was, it all came to a head at lunch because by lunchtime, the son began to think through all the ramifications of it. So he goes to his mom and said, you won't believe what this kid in your class did this morning in your class. So they called the police. They took this kid in handcuffs and took him to the office, called his parents. Now, what are some of the problems that happened because of that?
Teacher was not monitoring.
Teacher was not monitoring. What else? Guess where he found the information? On the hard drive of the computer where he was sitting. Computers had been moved over the summer. That one was formerly in an administrative office, and that data had never been removed from the hard drive. So he did not access the internet. He did not hack into anybody's information.
It just came up.
It was right there. Now, the thing that was against him is one of the things they could get him for was that it wasn't the assignment that he was supposed to be working on. But our technology plan and discipline plan didn't state that you had to be working on what you were assigned. It stated things like a teacher had to be actively monitoring. It stated things like a student couldn't go on the internet and access places that they weren't directed to go, but this wasn't on the internet. So, so there's only one thing that they really could get him for. He hadn't misused any equipment. He hadn't misused the internet, but there is one law or one policy that would stand with this. And what was it?
Had to do with privacy.
Nope.
Hmm.
And it's really one of the biggest ones when it comes to technology. That's what I'm bringing it around to, the law. It's one of the biggest things you've got on your side. What do you think happened when he started whispering to his friend, or the guy who made it started whispering to his friends what the capability of this website would be? Do you think it caused a disruption? Because I'm telling you, it did. When students started talking in class that, hey, so-and-so has access to this information, and if you want to go in and change your grades, he can tell you how to do it. So that was the law. That's the law, is the disruption to the school day.
Mhm.
Now, it was kind of weak. Now, I'm very sad to tell you that the reason I understand this case so well is because I was the mother of this student. And I was also a technology specialist in the system. And my superintendent had been on the job for 3 days, new superintendent. So it was a real fun time at our house. But the main thing is, I understood what he was doing because he was making a statement. He was really angry about the way that class was going and that she was being paid extra to teach this class, and he was the one that was teaching it. I think that's one of the big issues. But anyway, the main thing was that we were not careful about protecting documents. Now, luckily, because he's my son and he knows I would have killed him, this information wasn't going anywhere. His whole performance was to show what if, but it was never released, it was never connected, and it was never linked. But the school, and quite frankly, I get it, I don't blame them, was really thinking that they were going to persecute him and make a case out of it, in a big way, because this terrified all of us that something like this could happen. And we're just lucky that it happened with him. But it brought home the fact that if this happened with him, then it could happen with others. And maybe then it wouldn't be so protected. So that was the beginning of technology use. We were just starting to use technology for grades and to document discipline and things like that. So, so it was a really big deal. But, you know, once the attorney was involved, they pretty much said, you know, the school really is not going to win this because, you know, first of all, the teacher wasn't actively monitoring. Had she been, she would have seen it. And secondly, that information was within his grasp on the computer that he was given. So, so anyway, you know, other than, I think every punishment he could have had at home for the rest of his life, and to this day, I still make him pay for it. Every chance I get, he has to remotely enter into my computer and fix it when I lose something or mess up and can't fix it. So he did go into, he is a technology engineer, if that makes you feel any better. But, you know, he suffers from social anxiety. So he's a loner, keeps to himself. And this was that's just how he expressed anger. I think he was in the 10th or 11th grade, no, 11th grade, 12th grade, because that was he was also first in his class. And so he lost that position and he lost honor society. And I felt like we were pretty good to get off with that. And he was okay with that, because he didn't want to give a speech anyway, but he still hasn't gotten over the fact that he missed Honor Society, because there was not a direct rule that linked that together. And the only reason I went along with it is because Honor Society does have a certain code of conduct. And in his mind, he didn't break that because he didn't release it. He had the information, but he didn't release it, and he wouldn't have. But he did cause quite a stir. So that's my technology story. And I can tell you that when we first started talking about it, we never envisioned that technology would be to the degree it is right now in the schools. And so I'm just curious. I always like to teach this class, because the textbook was out of date the day it was written when it comes to technology. But you are out there in the trenches, and you are the ones that are experiencing it. And usually every school has some big issue every year. And you know, it blows my mind. I have a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old granddaughter. They text me all during the day. Oh, Nana, look what I just made on this test. Oh, Nana, what about so-and-so? That just blows my mind. But that's the way it is. So have any of you had any issues that you can share with us, or things that have come up at your school?
I have one.
Okay.
We had a student hack our homepage and put some male genitalia all over the homepage. That was a good one.
Wow. What happened?
He was given a 10-day suspension, long-term, but he was allowed to come back because of his special needs, his exceptional needs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who else?
We've had one where this sixth grader, he went into, he tore down the firewall for the school, and they're they suspended him for a few days, but then they still put him into the computer class. Then they told me he's not to be on the computer. I said, well, why did y'all put him in my classroom? I said, I'm not gonna give him the paper and pencil. So what'd you put him in my room for? But he was a very smart boy. He's in the 9th grade now. But he was very, very smart. But for 3 years, they tried to keep him off of the computers. And plus, he also had a Chromebook that the school issued to every student.
Yeah.
And so I guess at certain times, they would let him use a Chromebook in the core classes, but he was watched. But he was smart. He was very smart. He could go into those programs real quick.
Yeah.
He knew how to downsize them. So you think he's doing his work? I've called him a couple of times. He had some. He was working with. He was looking at pictures. He was looking at balls, and I'm not talking about bouncing balls.
Right.
I caught him, but I
So
had to.
what else? What other things have you dealt with?
Not in my current district, but a previous district. Teachers check out iPads.
Yeah.
And had brought her iPad in, I guess, midways through the summer. But when other teachers came in at the beginning of the year to start checking out, hers was checked out to someone else. And she obviously had her personal iTunes account that had some suggestive photos of her.
Oh my.
The other teacher that checked it out went to do a presentation on the Promethean board. Up are those photos. Well, lots of people thought that she would lose her job behind it for using computer belonging to the district. However, they determined it wasn't her computer, it was her personal iTunes account.
Yeah, and
that
see,
had,
that's real slippery there.
Mhm.
yes, very slippery. She didn't lose her job, but the pure embarrassment behind it, and people still talk about it to this day.
I'm sure they do. I am sure they do. That's really where the slippery slope comes in too. Like, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, and Tinker are the three laws that we have that things are going to be compared to. But like, I mean, just like for example, if you have a student's cell phone, and if you confiscate a student's cell phone for something, that's one thing. But then if you start looking through that cell phone for information, that's quite another.
Mhm.
Because you didn't have probable cause to do that. You just start randomly going through and select other people, you know. Another thing is, if you find pornography or child pornography of any kind, you don't access that. You immediately report it. You would be amazed at how often people open it up and look at it or show it to someone else in their office before they turn it over. That makes you a viewer of it. That does not make you, you know, and so that's a really, really, you have to be really careful with that.
What about schools with where there are district provided cameras in classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some classrooms that don't have district provided cameras, and teachers are utilizing like little cameras that they have purchased to monitor classes. To me, that's a slippery slope.
To monitor a class, like as
To
like doorbell ring monitoring.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. That's a little big brotherish to me. If one of my kids or grandkids got in trouble because they had been monitored by a video device in their classroom, I'd be pretty upset about it myself.
Yeah, and especially it's not a district purchased.
Yeah. I would be real curious on what the policy is, because I would think that would be, the teacher would be setting herself up or himself up for a major lawsuit there.
That's my thought, because I also think it's an infringement upon civil rights. If you don't notify me that my child is being, I don't know what you're doing with that information.
Exactly.
I
And
know.
the child's privacy too, you know.
Yeah.
I know at my school there's a teacher who has cameras in his classroom. I have them in mine, and they were bought with district funds, but not installed by the district. But this other teacher, and they don't record. Mine don't record, but his does. Because of theft. I have a lot of theft in my classroom, but he does as well, the auto mechanics teacher, and he used it for that purpose. You know, kids see the camera, they know they're there. I
Right,
think they don't work.
right.
But then when they get in trouble, I didn't do it. Oh yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Because here it is. And that's what we do.
And I can see that more in terms of something like that as a security
Security, yeah.
policy and part of a policy. I can see
Right.
that. But as far as a teacher teaching and just monitoring, I don't know. It feels different
But
to me.
even with that, I still think that there is an obligation to notify parents that this is being done.
Right. I would think that if it was a policy, a school policy, there would have to be parental consent.
Yes.
And a parent, yes, there would have to be parental consent, and a parent would have to like sign for it and be informed of it. I can't imagine being able to do that. Rhonda, are you in culinary? Is that what you do?
Yes.
Yes. So you have like knives and stuff in your room? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Okay, so I do have knives in my room, and I'm sure, have stolen them at some point. But they go for the food more than anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I keep my knives locked up into my office until we use them.
Right. What about
But they
theft?
steal everything.
What about theft of cell phones? Is that a big issue?
For me, I have a shoe storage place in my classroom, and it is, you come in, you put your phone in the case, and once everybody is in class and we go to the lab, students leave their phone in that area, and I lock my doors, and monitor students coming and going.
Right. What do some of the rest of you do?
Hey, Dr. Z.
Yeah.
On the cell phone thing, we've noticed a tremendous uptick, especially this year, in students airdropping those photos, pornographic photos of other students. And we even had a few situations, I'd say 3 or 4 this year, where students have mirrored their cell phone onto the screen in the classroom. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We've seen some interesting things this year.
And see, how do you cover all of that in your policy? You have a technical use policy?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Charisse, how do you do that? I'm trying to unmute you. We're probably doing it at the same time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Hold on. Let me tell my husband again. Okay, he's on the phone. I didn't want him talking behind me. But so we have in our handbook, we have a policy on, our policy is not on cell phone use. That's just our school policy. That's not necessarily like in our student code of conduct, but it's just a school policy that you are not allowed to have your phones out. And if you disobey that expectation, then that falls under a category in our handbook. So maybe disrespect to faculty, or misuse. If you have it out, it's considered misusing it because you shouldn't have it out. So misuse of technology. So we put it underneath of one of our level 1 behaviors if they take out a phone. Now, if they use it like social media, we've had a case where a student put another student on social media. Like, she turned her camera on another student, and she was, she was name calling, and she posted it on social media, and that happened during school. So like, she was suspended for that, because not only did she have her cell phone out, it was misuse of technology because she posted another student on social media without that student's permission, or without parents' permission or anybody else's. So in a case like that, our handbook, when it comes to technology, we do need to be more specific. I feel like a little too much of it is left up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had like, our stories wouldn't hardly top what you guys have shared so far. Ours wouldn't top that, but ours are more so the students just taking out the phones on social media, but nothing to the point where it would, like, where we've had to call in the board to have a board review case, not over technology. So most of ours are smaller behaviors with the phones. We're a K-8 school, so we really haven't had any situations. We've We've had one situation where a student, this was second grade, and second grade, she logged in to like one of our online learning systems at home, where you can only chat with your teacher, and she sent her teacher a message and said that she was gonna kill her.
Yeah, it would be kind of rough.
Yeah, so now that was a suspension. We had to give her a consequence for that. It was not long term, because throughout the investigation we figured that she didn't really know what she was doing. She was only 7 or 8, so she really didn't understand what she was doing. However, if anything like that occurs again with her, then it will be considered. We will consider long term. Right. But that's the only case that we've had with our elementary. With our middle schoolers, those are more frequent, but like I said, those are smaller behaviors. And I'm glad, because right now, the way our handbook, we can't change our handbook in the middle of the school year, not without like a long drawn out process,
Right.
getting approved. So it's just better to just note everything that happens, everything that, if it slips through our fingers, if anything, every time we kind of comb through it every time we have in any type of situation, and just note it so we can make that change moving forward.
Right.
So we were already thinking for next year to have a section just on technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, you know, the courts have done a pretty good job upholding the schools or supporting schools in cases of cyberbullying, especially. Even in things that originate outside of school.
Absolutely.
Yes, but they bring it into the school and it disrupts the school day. That's the one you go for.
Right. That's what we have. We've done that. Even if it starts outside of school, but it's brought into the school day, we assume responsibility. So it becomes our situation to deal with. If it impacts or if it impedes anybody's learning, then we assume that responsibility.
There was one case where a student was at a restaurant somewhere in town where a teacher was there also, and he was in the parking lot and took a picture of him shooting the bird to this teacher, like behind her back when she turned or something. And they took it to court. The teacher did, I think, or the school did, or the school suspended him or punished him for that act. And the court stood with him on that case. And the reason they did was because it was far removed from the school. It had no ramifications within the school. It had nothing to do with disruption of school day. It was more of a personal thing. But if it gets into bullying where a teacher is threatened or sexually explicit material or attacking a teacher, different things, they do uphold us many, many times.
Okay.
So that's getting a lot. It's getting a lot better, but it's such a new area, and there are attorneys now that just focus on these. But the whole point is these cases are being determined as they go to court. What a way to learn a lesson, huh?
I know.
I personally want to get the lessons that have already been learned, but this area is so new and it just keeps changing. And now with some of the stuff going on with TikTok and Instagram.
Yep.
But as future administrators too, and you may have some of these examples that you can share with us, but from day one, my biggest message was to staff. And I would, very first staff meeting, I talked about what was acceptable and appropriate on Facebook and pretty much said, if you go out there on Facebook and show a side of yourself that isn't fitting of what the norm is for expectations of a teacher, then don't expect me to support you, because it's very clear that's not the place to take your personal drunken activities and address and different things like that. And again, it goes back, if you look in the contract, in our contract, in North Carolina, I'm sure it's South Carolina, it's all the same way. We do have a certain expectation that we have to stand up to, of being morally and ethically right, good individuals, because we have the future of kids that are so easy to sway or warp depending on which side of that fence you're on. But so we do have a certain expectation. And I was just real quick, because it's probably been back in the, around 2012, 2013, I guess, because of where Facebook was at the time. But all of a sudden, teachers were popping up everywhere, losing their jobs over different pictures they posted, different things they said, videos, just all sorts of things. So do any of you have like school issues with that or ways to prevent it? Or
my principal told us to, because our parents do want to know who we are. They want to know about us, and they do search for us on social media. So she advises us to create a professional page. And she said, just go in the settings. She doesn't tell you that until after you're hired, because before that she uses it. She uses it to look up people.
that's
before
exactly
they're hired.
right. Been there, done that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But she advises you to just create a professional page. That way, when our families do look you up, that your professional page shows and not your personal one. So I know several teachers have done that. That's what I did. I don't really post on it anyway. So as a matter of fact, I need to do a better job, because part of our job is to make statements on social media, to have a social media presence. But that's a weakness for me. But for our teachers, I know that there are several teachers that have a professional page as well as a personal page.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it can be used for so much good.
Mm-hmm.
I just, especially when I was working, full-time as a principal, every day I would post something that I saw, and I would say, man, I just saw some of the greatest stuff in the classroom today. I saw a child do this. I saw a teacher do that. And I kept it short, and I put it out there to everybody, whoever. And I get responses back like, oh, I had no idea that you did things like that in school. Or, today we were able to provide breakfast, or today we were able to provide food for so many kids to take home this weekend, or coats, or whatever it was. You can tell by what's happening in North and South Carolina to our profession that we are not doing a very good job of being our cheerleaders in publicity. For so long, we have been so focused on what goes on in the classroom, and we just assume the rest is going to happen and we'll be taken care of. But it's really coming to a point where we have to be advocates for ourselves.
Right.
And so, and I also used to encourage parents to post positive comments about teachers. Like let everybody know that, because I just think it's really important.
Dr. Z,
Yes.
it seems like over the last, I've been teaching for 10 years now. And when I got started, we got to talk about Facebook and your social media presence, and everyone was terrified of social media. But I think over the years, as we've gotten used to it, because these kids are natives to it, where we're just trying to figure it out. And now that we've gotten used to and comfortable with it, like our schools, we use Twitter and Facebook to do what you're saying, as far as like talking about the positive that goes on in the school.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, we can, we're afraid of it. I'm terrified of it myself, but, but we can also use it for good.
Yeah, it is. And I think it just goes back to, when we talked about the laws that, the tort liability and all this, it's kind of the same thing with this. It's foreseeability. So thinking ahead and seeing what you need to outline for your staff, or to steer things in a positive direction. You really can. There's so much good that can come from it. And let's see. So it was cyberbullying, and that's the other thing I wanted to point out. And I know you know this, but as a principal, this is your biggest nightmare, is going to be cyberbullying, as far as something comes to you at 5:06 on a Friday afternoon, and you can't just react to it, because you're going to have to study the law. You're going to have to contact somebody at central office and really make sure that you investigate it properly and respond properly. But it's 5 minutes after, or 6 minutes after 5 on a Friday, and you can't get somebody that you need. And then if that cyberbullying leads to something detrimental over that weekend, not only could you be liable for that, but your conscience is certainly going to have you carry that with you. So just remember that when it comes to cyberbullying. We can't, and here's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up about the second grader, because I was so upset that I had to suspend a kindergartner for carrying a water gun to school. But the water gun was in his pocket, and the shape of the gun was seen, and everybody on that bus was terrified and convinced that their lives were in danger. And based on the way our policy was written, it didn't matter whether it was a real gun or pretend gun. you know, you have to suffer the consequences of that. And people will say, oh, that is so stupid. Y'all are getting so overboard. But we're not. It's just like that 7-year-old who maybe didn't exactly know what she was doing, but she does now. So kids may not understand all the consequences of their actions, but it doesn't mean they can't learn from them. And it doesn't mean that they don't need to be punished, because they do. But it needs to be in a way that learning takes place.
I have a question, and this is for everybody. Have you guys or your school systems started the Say Something
Yes.
initiative?
I was getting ready to mention that whenever she mentioned about the 506 on a Friday afternoon,
Right.
we have had several tips that actually come in over the weekend. And that's kind of uneasy because you're not there, and it's worrisome.
When
Our
did you
school
guys
district
launch
has
it?
that as well.
Do what?
Tell us,
was-
how
Our
does
school
it work?
district has that as well, and then there's a protocol of who initially receives it,
Yes.
reviews it, and then delegates it to whether it be myself in my current role as a counselor or the AP.
Yes. That's kind of the gist. There is a training system that students participate in, and basically it's like there's a little introductory video, and then there's a lengthier video that is pretty graphic, and we our school kind of figured that out the hard way because we had some parents who were concerned about the contents of the video. So that was a learning curve and a learning experience for us for the way that we rolled that out. But basically it trains students in regards to if they see anything alarming on social media, whether it's a comment about self-harm or school violence, anything of that nature, it gives them they can either download an app, they can call a hotline number, or they can go to a specific website and they can report a tip anonymously, and that tip will then go to a team of trained professional, I think they are counselors, and they can chat with those counselors anonymously, and the counselors kind of ask for guiding questions. And if it gets to the point where they need to contact someone from the school level, the school has a team of people who are available to contact, and typically those team members keep like the black notebook. We have the black binder, and it has all of our student information in it, so that we have it 24/7 if we need to be contacted by one of those professionals. That way we can give personal demographic information in case someone does need to report to the scene if someone is in immediate harm of endangering themselves or someone else. That's kind of the way that works. And then depending on the severity of the tip, we received a tip, I think it was one Sunday morning around 10 a.m., but the tip had actually been made that Saturday night. But because it wasn't a severe and in danger right then case, they decided to push it out until the next day when we were notified.
All right.
We're still learning.
Yeah, we recently launched ours. We launched last week. So
Okay.
thankfully we haven't had any tips. We haven't had any tips, but it's the same how you explained it. That's why I was listening. I'm like, okay, what happens? But the calls go to either myself, our school counselor, or our assistant principal. We had to turn in our cell phone numbers because if you do get a call, it comes straight to my phone. So we'll get a text message that says you have a call, and then we have to log in and see how it's categorized, and it still goes, like you were saying, to the call center.
Right.
They handle it, and then they kind of categorize it for us, and then either get us involved if we need to, or they escalate it if they need to. But I am like keeping my hands like this, like hopefully, I want it to be useful. I want it to be used because we do have a lot of students that report, and a lot of students are afraid to say something. So I'm glad that we have it, because that way students can report things at any time, any given time of the day, night, weekend, holiday, whatever. And once somebody at the school will always be alerted. So hopefully we don't have to use it, but I'm glad we have it.
Exactly.
Something else that we kind of found interesting, and you may encounter the same thing because you also said that you were at a K-8 school. So it's geared towards middle grade students, and they send all of these posters to post around your school. So our concern was, okay, we're going to post these posters. Students in grades K-5 are going to see these posters, and I mean, it shows the app that they can download.
Mhm. We
So
told our
they're going to
teachers
be
to
equipped
tell
with this
them.
app that they are not trained, and they've not received any type of training in regards to how to use it.
We told our teachers that if once they do, because they will see it and they've
Yes.
seen it. We just told our teachers to have a conversation with
Yes.
say this is for middle school. However, if you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or if you see something uncomfortable, unsafe, then say something to one of us.
Right. We've also received in the district, we haven't received any at my school, but in the district, some other schools have received false tips. Just
Okay.
people making reports.
Right. Okay.
Well, it's the thing that changes every day, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many blogs out there for teachers and administrators. And I don't know if there's one in particular. You might talk to your technology people and see, but there may be one. I would imagine that there is one out there that has some of the current trends, some of the things to look for, to try to stay a step ahead of the game as you move into that big administrative chair. But I think it's also just my parting advice is I was told when I got my principalship, that will be the loneliest chair you ever sit in. The loneliest. And I didn't really get that at first until the first thing happened that I wanted to tell my side of the story. And if I could just tell my side of the story, why that person was relieved of their duties, or why that student was expelled for so long, or whatever it is, I could just tell my side of the story, you would understand. And so what I learned to do instead was to develop, and I mean develop, it doesn't happen, but I developed trust with my staff and trust with my parents, to the point that, like the mama that says, because I said so, I could just say, I can't explain to you why. You're just going to have to trust me on this one, that I would not have made that decision lightly, that I would not have done it if I didn't have to, and it's really, really important that you think about that before you become a principal. How are you going to do that? There's a lot of stuff out there about developing trust. It's one of my daughter-in-law is working on her dissertation, and she did a lot of interviews. And so when I started naming things, I was like amazed. I didn't realize the things I did were building trust. But maybe we'll hit on that one night, because it's a good conversation. But the main thing is you just want to tell somebody and you can't. And so that's like with those pictures on the phone, you want to tell somebody, you can't believe it. It's such an outrage. You cannot believe it, but you cannot share it either. You cannot tell anybody So, all right, I'm going to hang out here. If anybody has any artifact questions, we have a lot of people that are ready to put their together and send it off. And I know you and I will both be quite happy once that's done. But I will say overall, we have had some amazing papers. Y'all just done, as a group, you've done a great job. I still have a few people that I'd like to work a little harder, but, but just anything that we can do to help you, we're here. So I'm going to sign off, click off record, but if anybody has any questions, you just
I do.
down. Kathy,
Mm-hmm.
what's your question?
I'm trying to finish up the one.
Yep.
Task one.
Yep.
All the graphics, you want all the graphics near the end, at the end of the paper?
Yes.
Or within the picture, within the paper?
No, at the end.
At the end.
And that's a good rule for everybody that I've noticed. Maybe APSA was different because that was your focus. But here, the guide is that you are telling a story. It's a narrative. And so your graphs, your master schedule, the things that you are showing and uploading, those are just supporting what you said. They're not to replace it. So some people would put a master schedule and say a few sentences and basically, here, you can see it in the schedule. No, you have to tell us in this one. It's a narrative, so you tell us. And in most cases, not in all cases, it's your judgment. It's your judgment call. And that's why if I suggest you make a change and move them to the end, that is my suggestion. But if I tell you you gotta, then you gotta. But sometimes it's just a suggestion that I'm telling you. I've been an evaluator, and when they get in that paper, their focus is looking for what they're looking for. And all of these graphs and tables just confuse the matter. Some of you write so well that I'm going along with your story and I'm getting into it. And then all of a sudden, here's a graphic, and a couple more sentences, and there's a graphic. And it's very disruptive. So that's kind of how I'm wanting you to think about it.
Thank you, ma'am.
AJ, I think you had a question. Did you? Well, yeah, let me unmute you. There. I can't unmute you.
There we go. Are you getting, am I turning the stuff into you in the right spot?
You are. In fact,
Okay.
I think I hit you today. Let's see.
Okay.
And I'll tell you for sure. But I know I read stuff by you today.
Okay.
AJ, yes. I just haven't finished the last one yet.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
But you should
That's
have some comments in there. Some of you didn't know where to go to find the comments, so I've tried to copy them and email them to you too. But,
Now, I uploaded stuff to TaskStream as well. Is that where you're reading stuff,
no,
or is that?
you don't do anything to TaskStream.
Well, I didn't submit it. I didn't submit anything. Okay. So I know.
Yeah, that's something that might be new from when you started, but you don't do anything from TaskStream for a while.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless you're doing it in the competency folio. Now you can do that.
Right. No, okay, I'm good.
Okay.
I think. Thank you.
Nothing will happen that we can't fix. I'll put it that way.
Yes, ma'am.
Who else? I know you're having a great time with them. Yes. Cherise?
Did you get my app tell? You had asked for a copy of it.
I did.
Okay.
But by the time I got it, I was over it.
Okay.
Sometimes when you cut and paste and glue that app tail in, it's like I can't quite figure out what's happening.
Okay.
Unless I know what part you took it from, but I figured it out. Sarah and I figured it. Sometimes we'll do them together.
Okay.
We figured it out.
Okay, perfect.
You should have gotten my final comments on that too.
I didn't. Can you resend them?
Yes, let's see.
Did you send them today?
It would have been today.
Oh, okay. I'll look and see.
All right. If not, I'm looking to see if I sent you an email. Here it is. I might get my thing off Wednesday. I can't wait. I just can't wait.
I think Megan has a question. I'll mute myself because Megan.
Okay, Cherise, I don't see it, so I'll look again.
Okay.
Sure, but I know you're in there.
Okay, thanks.
Megan, you have one?
No question. I was celebrating with you. Get that off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. My office is just a wreck because,
Right before I went into student teaching, I broke my thumb.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge with first graders, trying to help them write, not being able to model that.
That is exactly right. I broke my left thumb right before I became a principal.
Oh, no.
And that was the same, because that's a big cast you get on it for that.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that was rough. All right, anybody else?
Yeah,
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Do you have an estimate of about how many points we should have in our grade book?
In
Like a ballpark figure
the,
we should be?
no, but I can tell you, I can look. It's like, you get 100 points for every discussion board, and you should be through 5 because we switched 6 and 7, so that's going to change it. So you should have 500 points for discussion board. And then I think you end up getting 200 points for your peer reviews because you have to put them in 2 different places. So we felt like if you have to upload them in 2 different places, the least we could do is give you 100 for each of those. So you got those 2, and then each piece of the OMA gets 100 points. And then again, I think when you submit that the second time, if you have to put that in the second place, I think there's an extra 100 for that. But I can tell you that. I can look it up and tell you. I'll make a note. It might be tomorrow night before I get back from wherever I'm going tomorrow. Somerville. But I can tell you that as long as you are doing your discussion boards like they're expected to be done, and as long as you're doing your parts of the OMA, we're good. And unless you're just blatantly laid back about things, we don't take points off if something's late. Life happens. And there's like 25 of you turning through with different classes. We could have 25 or 30 responses coming in the same day. So, you know, if you're sick, if somebody in your family's sick, something comes up, I do appreciate your communication. Y'all have been excellent about that. That when you get an automated message too, that's not harassment from me. That just automatically comes out from the grade book when I go in and check and see what assignments are missing. And the only reason I use that feature is because I want to make sure that you're getting credit for what you've turned in. And occasionally somebody will email me and say, I got this message, but I've already turned this in. And then I can find it that way. Or they put it in one place and it should have been in another place. Okay. Anybody else? All right, y'all have a good day tomorrow. I hope it's a wonderful Tuesday for you. And if you have any questions though, feel free to contact me. And if you get comments back on an artifact and it doesn't make sense, just call me and we'll talk it through. Sometimes it's so much easier to talk through it than it is to try to communicate. It sounds so much worse in words, you know, or it looks so much worse when it's written down than when you talk and say, oh, really, all you need to do is change this heading or move this there. Because so far there haven't been that many big corrections, just some minor ones. Okay?
I need to call you personally then.
There you go. If I'm around, I'll take it.
Okay.
All right.
Finish up this. I'm tired of it now.
All right.
Been working hard on it.
That
so.
sounds good. Well, I gave you some good feedback on that.
Yeah.
So
I just got to get it printed out so I can see. I can actually see it.
Yes, you'll have to do that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, everybody have a great night.